What happens when a Hollywood-born talk show queen, loved for her warmth and compassion, suddenly faces a royal who seems determined to test that very patience? The Jennifer Hudson Show had built its reputation on kindness, connection, and authenticity. Audiences came for the laughter, the music, and the heart. But on this day, the studio would become a courtroom, and Prince Harry would find himself on trial. The cameras rolled, lights bathed the stage in gold. The announcer's booming voice filled the room. "Please welcome Jennifer Hudson." Jennifer stepped out in a dazzling emerald gown, her trademark smile spreading across her face as the audience erupted in cheers. She waved, laughed, and blew kisses, her energy infectious. "Welcome back, everybody," she said, her rich voice warming the room. "Today, we have a very special guest. You know him from headlines around the world. Some love him, some criticize him, but everyone has an opinion. Please welcome Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex." The applause came, but not with the unrestrained joy usually reserved for Jennifer's guests. There were polite claps, a few curious whistles, but also a ripple of tension. Everyone in the room knew this wouldn't be just another interview. Prince Harry walked onto the stage, dressed in a sharp navy suit, no tie, collar open. His smile was tentative, more defensive than warm. He waved stiffly at the crowd before shaking Jennifer's hand. "Harry," Jennifer beamed, "welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us." "Thank you for having me," he replied smoothly, though his tone carried a trace of rehearsed caution. The two settled into their chairs. Jennifer's energy glowed as she leaned forward. "Harry, you've made such a major transition these past few years, from royal life in the UK to private life in California. How has that shift been for you?" Harry's jaw flexed almost imperceptibly. He gave a short laugh, but it sounded forced. "Is that your way of saying I wasn't happy there?" The audience chuckled awkwardly. Jennifer blinked, her smile tightening but holding. "Not at all. I just meant it must be a big cultural shift, from palace walls to the California lifestyle." Harry's tone cooled. "Life is a cultural shift no matter where you are. I don't define myself by where I live or by titles people insist on clinging to. That's the mistake others make, not me." The response landed heavy. Jennifer nodded gently, but the warmth in her smile dimmed slightly. "Well," she continued, "I think a lot of viewers are curious about how this journey has felt for you personally." Harry leaned back in his chair, arms loose but his voice sharp. "Personally, I've always adapted just fine. What's exhausting is people constantly dissecting my choices. Some of us choose freedom. Others cling to outdated rules." A murmur rippled through the audience. Jennifer smoothed her gown and pressed on. "And speaking of personal choices, people always want to know about your marriage. How are you and Meghan balancing everything with family life?" The audience leaned forward. Harry's smile flickered, then hardened. "Family life is wonderful, but let me be clear, Jennifer. I find it troubling that people still treat my marriage as if it's open for debate. Meghan and I don't need to defend ourselves. Not to tabloids. Not to anyone." Gasps and whispers spread through the studio. Jennifer's smile faltered for just a second before she chuckled lightly, trying to steady the tone. "I didn't mean it as gossip, Harry. Our audience just loves hearing about family life. That's all." Harry's response came cold and quick. "Then tell them we're fine. That's all they need to know." The audience clapped politely, but the energy had shifted. What began as curiosity was now tension. Jennifer inhaled, her voice steady. "All right, let's look back a little. You've spoken openly about stepping away from the royal family. What lessons have you learned since leaving?" Harry's eyes narrowed. His voice was sharper now. "I've learned that institutions built on tradition don't care about humanity. They care about control. People think I should be grateful for being born into privilege. But I refuse to thank a family that silenced me, judged my wife, and put headlines above my happiness. I walked away, and I don't regret it." A hush fell over the studio. Jennifer nodded slowly, but her poise was stretched thin. She knew millions were watching, waiting for her response. "Well," she said softly, her voice laced with quiet strength, "you certainly don't hold back." Harry smirked faintly, his jaw tight. "Why should I? The camera panned across the audience. Some shook their heads. Others whispered, their unease palpable. In the control room, a producer whispered urgently, "This is going to blow up." And indeed it would. When the show returned from its first commercial break, the audience could feel the shift in the air. The applause sign flashed, but this time the clapping was uneven, hesitant. It was no longer the relaxed joy of a Jennifer Hudson taping. It was the sound of people bracing themselves for conflict. Jennifer's radiant smile filled the screen once again, but behind her eyes was a flicker of determination. She leaned toward her guest with poise that came from years of weathering storms. "We're back," she said warmly, though her tone carried an edge. "And we're here with Prince Harry, who has been at the center of global conversation these past few years." Harry adjusted in his chair, his blazer sharp, his expression tighter than before. "That's because people can't stop talking about me," he muttered with a thin smile. Jennifer chuckled politely, but didn't let the remark linger. "Harry, let's get straight into it. You've often described your departure from the royal family as an act of survival, but some people see it differently. They say you abandoned your duty, that you turned your back on your family. What do you say to them?" The audience leaned forward. This was the question they had been waiting for. Harry's face hardened. His eyes flashed as he leaned toward Jennifer. "What I say is this: I chose freedom. I chose my wife and children over an institution that never truly cared about me. People talk about duty, but what about the duty they had to protect us, to stand with us when the press tore Meghan apart? Where was their loyalty then?" Murmurs swept through the crowd. Jennifer nodded slowly, her smile dimming. "Some would argue, though, that your family was also hurt by the way you left, publicly, dramatically, through interviews and books. That instead of handling things privately, you've made it all a spectacle." Harry scoffed audibly. "A spectacle? Do you know what a spectacle is, Jennifer? Living in a palace where every move you make is analyzed, every word twisted. Leaving was the first real choice I made for myself. If people think that's a betrayal, then maybe they should look in the mirror." The audience's murmurs grew louder. A few clapped in support, but most looked unsettled. Jennifer's voice dropped slightly, her warmth replaced with steel. "Harry, I have to be honest. Many people admire your courage, but many others believe you've changed your story over time. They say one minute you wanted privacy, and the next you were signing deals with Netflix and writing memoirs. How do you explain that?" The question landed like a punch. Harry's jaw tensed, his cheeks flushed. "Explain? I don't owe explanations for how I live my life. Privacy doesn't mean silence. Privacy means I get to choose what I share, on my terms. That's something the press and my so-called family never understood." Jennifer nodded, but her patience was thinning. "But surely you understand why people are confused. One moment you say you want peace, the next you're giving another interview. Can you see how it looks?" Harry's voice rose, sharper now. "What it looks like is irrelevant. What matters is the truth. And the truth is, people keep demanding I justify myself. I've already told my story. If they don't like it, that's their problem." The crowd gasped. A woman in the front row whispered loudly, "Then why is he here?" Her words rippled through the audience, drawing scattered laughs and nods. Jennifer inhaled deeply, her smile fading entirely now. She leaned forward, her tone steady but firm. "Harry, let me tell you something. When you ask the public to believe your story, when you write a book, when you sign documentaries, you invite questions. That's not an attack. That's accountability." The studio erupted in applause, louder and longer this time. People cheered Jennifer's words, clapping in agreement. Harry's face darkened. He shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping. "Accountability? Where is the accountability for the family that ignored me? For the press that profits off my pain? Funny how nobody ever asked them the hard questions." Jennifer's eyes blazed. Her voice sharpened, carrying above the crowd. "Don't twist this, Harry. I'm not your family. I'm not the tabloids. I'm sitting here as a host giving you the space to speak. But instead of answering, you keep turning every question into an attack. That's not honesty. That's avoidance, Val. The audience exploded into applause. Some stood clapping and cheering Jennifer's name. The energy was no longer split. The crowd had chosen their side. Harry's lips pressed into a hard line. He leaned forward, his voice dripping with frustration. So that's what this is? A chance for you to lecture me? To make me the villain? Jennifer's expression was calm but unyielding. No, Harry, this is a chance for you to be real. To show the world that you're more than headlines and bitterness. But so far, all I see is anger. The audience roared again, the sound almost drowning Harry out. He sat back in his chair, his hands gripping the armrests, his composure visibly cracking. And for the first time that afternoon, it was clear. Prince Harry was losing control of the room. The studio was no longer a talk show stage. It had become an arena. The air felt heavy, as though every word might tip the balance further. Prince Harry sat rigid in his chair, his jaw tight, his eyes darting between Jennifer and the restless audience. His polished navy suit, so carefully chosen to project control, now looked like armor cracking under pressure. Jennifer Hudson, meanwhile, leaned slightly forward, her emerald earrings catching the stage lights. The warmth that had built her reputation was gone. What remained was steel, a host unwilling to let her stage be hijacked by bitterness. Harry, Jennifer began, her voice calm but laced with resolve. You've spoken about pain, about freedom, about survival, but let's be honest. Many people don't see a man who found freedom. They see a man who traded his crown for a contract. They see someone who cashed in on his last name while tearing down the very family that had gave it to him. The audience erupted into gasps, then applause. Some shouted, "Yes," while others clapped furiously. Harry's face flushed crimson. He leaned forward, his voice rising. That's unfair. You don't understand what it was like. I was trapped. My wife was treated horribly. My children would have suffered. Jennifer cut in, her voice sharp, her hand raised slightly. And what about your father? What about your brother? What about the grandmother who gave her life to service? Did they deserve to be dragged through interviews, memoirs, and Netflix specials? Families fight, Harry, but most people don't sell those fights to the highest bidder. The audience exploded in cheers. People stood, clapping and stomping their feet. Phones lit up like stars as everyone recorded the moment. Harry's composure cracked. He shook his head, laughing bitterly. You sound just like the press, just like them. I thought this was supposed to be an honest conversation, not an ambush. Jennifer's eyes narrowed, her tone dropping lower, calmer but deadlier. Honest conversations mean answering questions, Harry, not dodging them, not blaming everyone else. You say you want privacy, but you keep signing deals that put your life on display. You say you walked away from royalty, but every headline, every deal, every word still leans on that title. You can't have it both ways. The crowd roared again. Applause thundered through the studio, drowning Harry's protests. He threw his hands up, his voice cracking with frustration. You don't know what I've sacrificed. Jennifer didn't flinch. She leaned in, her eyes locked on his. No, Harry. What I see is a man who gave up family for applause, who mistook sympathy for substance. You're not a royal anymore. You're not a victim anymore. And maybe it's time you stop acting like the world owes you something. And the audience erupted into its loudest reaction yet. People were on their feet, clapping, whistling, chanting Jennifer's name. The studio walls shook with the sound. Harry's face crumpled. His hands trembled as he reached down to unclip his microphone. His voice cracked, audible through the speakers. This was a mistake. I don't need to sit here and be insulted. He stood abruptly, grabbing his jacket from the back of the chair. The cameras followed as he stormed toward the wings, his expression a storm of rage and humiliation. Gasps and cheers followed him out. Jennifer Hudson remained seated, her posture regal, her gown glowing under the bright stage lights. She let the noise wash over her before raising a hand gently. The audience quieted. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice strong, unwavering. You came here expecting honesty. Instead, you saw someone walk away the moment accountability arrived. That's not what this show is about. This show is about truth, about connection, about facing the hard questions, even when it's uncomfortable. The audience leapt to their feet again, clapping wildly, some chanting Jennifer's name. The energy in the room was electric. Jennifer looked directly into the camera, her eyes calm but resolute. We'll be right back after this break, and when we return, we'll continue our conversation with real honesty. The band struck up transition music. The studio lights dimmed, but the damage was done. Prince Harry had walked onto Jennifer Hudson's stage expecting sympathy. He left in humiliation, his defenses shattered in front of millions. Jennifer Hudson, meanwhile, had delivered the boldest takedown of her career. Daytime television would never be the same again.